Now let's stop this bug from damaging us on the top and do a little bit more refactoring and renaming. We're going to go to the Ladybug script and find the spikes script. And the first thing I want to do is write the code so that we don't take damage if we hit it from above. We've done this a few times already using that dot product, and I'd love for you to go ahead and try to do it yourself. Give yourself a few minutes, see if you can write the code to ignore hits from the top. It should be about 3 lines of code, and then when you're done, go ahead and continue on. Or if you just want, go ahead and continue on as well. All right, so to do this, what we'll need to do, assuming you haven't done it already, is add a serialized field with a Boolean for ignore hit, or let's say ignore from top. Not from top. So we've got a Boolean there that we'll just check against. I'll add in an extra space here. And then in our on collision enter, we'll check to see if that ignore from top is set. And if so, we'll check to see if we hit from the top. So we'll say if ignore from top, and then we want to check the vector2 dot product of our collisions normal, which is that collision dot contacts 0, and then this is again an array of different contacts. If we somehow have a collision where we have 2 things touching at the exact same frame, or maybe we're in an on collision state where that's more likely, where we have 2 different points touching, we'll have more than one contact. But most of the time we'll have one contact at index 0. So we've got contacts 0 dot normal, which is going to give us the direction of that contact or the direction of that collision. The dot product will then compare that to vector2 dot down. So we'll compare the direction that we hit to the downward direction. And if those exactly match, we'll get a value of 1. If those are exact opposites, we'll get a value of -1. And then we'll get a value somewhere in between if they're not matching. So 0 would be completely perpendicular. So what we can just check to see is if it's greater than maybe like a 0.5. That way if we hit it on the edge, pretty good. If we don't hit it directly top on, we'll still bounce or we'll still not take damage. So if we've hit it somewhere from the top like that, we'll add in a closing parenthesis that lines up with that closing parenthesis, then we'll return. That's it. That's all we need. That should prevent us from taking damage. Let's go see. So we'll jump back over here. We'll turn that option on for the spikes on the Ladybug, and we'll press play. And I should be able to walk up to him, take some damage, and then jump on top of him and not take damage. In fact, let's just jump on him first. No damage. And then if I let him walk up to me, though, take some damage. But if I land on him, he's pretty safe. So it is working. That's exactly the behavior that I want. But now I've got an issue that I really don't like the way that this code looks. This right now has a Ladybug with a spikes script on it, and the spikes were intended to be those spike objects that obviously completely take hits from the top. So having this thing be named spikes and be reused against on multiple objects, I've got it on my Ladybug, I've got it on, I think, on my frog, and I've got it on my my actual spikes. And I think even on, is it on the lava too? There's a lot of things. So I'd like to change this now. I'd like to rename our spike script to be something that makes a little bit more sense for what it is. And I want to do that without completely breaking my project. So the first thing that I need to do, well, let's save my scene and then go find my spike script. So I'm going to click on it and select it. Go right over here, find the file, and rename this by hitting F2. Got it selected. There we go. F2 or a single click should do it. And I'm going to rename this to damage player. Now that's not going to do it alone because now my script is named damage player in the file, but the class is named spikes. It opened up in the code editor to show me that, but if you didn't open up your code editor, just double click that damage player file and it should open up. And if it still doesn't open up, you can always go to assets and then look for the open C# project, and that should force it to reload and hopefully find your project, or go over to the Solution Explorer, which is right here on mine, and then find it in your list. Once you've found your damage player script, you need to find the class name right here where it says spikes, hit Control R, and name this damage player. You need to match the casing and the name exactly with the file. Now, if you use Writer, it'll actually automatically do that for you. If you rename here, it'll rename the file for you. I don't think Visual Studio does that, though. If you just go in here and rename the class, it won't just go rename the file automatically. But either way, we've got it matched up now. We've got damage player, damage player. Let's go back into Unity. Haven't touched anything yet since I've been letting this change. And I can see that my damage player script is still here. It looks like it's working. I'm going to go take a look at one of my other scenes. Let's go look at level 1 and make sure that the damage player script is still on the things that I expect to damage the player. Like, did my lava have that? I'm trying to remember now. I believe it did. Yeah, damage player, perfect. And it should, of course, not ignore from the top. And my spikes also have the damage player script. So now it's looking a lot better. I think that the script makes a lot more sense. And the last thing we need to do is make our guy actually bouncy. But I think we'll do that in the next section. For now, let's save. Make sure that our sandbox is saved. We've got our damage player now checked in or ready to move. Notice that there's a move now in here. When we rename a C# file, or really if you rename any file, it's going to count as a move in your source control instead of a rename. There isn't usually a rename thing there. It counts as like moving the file from one path to a new path. So we're going to say that we made the spikes into a damage player script and gave it an option to ignore hits from the top, and check that in.